So we were asked by quite a few people to talk about different aspects of committee creation and what comes next. So we have our very welcome speakers from the national committees who will talk about either the process of accreditation and what they've done in their committees. Peter is going to talk a little bit about what the Blue Shield as a sort of organisation expects of its national committees to start us off. We should have Blue Shield Belgium and Blue Shield France joining us. I don't know if they share their video at least, and they can join us on screen when they're ready. And they're also going to talk about their committees because they're some of the oldest committees. And after Peter sort of tells you a little bit about what we expect from committees, then I've just been asked for those who are very new to give like a sort of 5-minute overview of the process, and then you'll be pleased to know, sit here very quietly, unless you have questions about the process. So, Peter.
Thank you. So what does the Blue Shield centrally expect from its committees? We have seen wonderful and extensive range of work from the national committees over the last 3 days. There are national committee reports on our website. There is the annual report on our website, and I would encourage you all to go and look at those because what you've heard over the last few days is literally scratching the surface of the fantastic work that national committees are doing at the moment. We have, at the moment, 34 national committees. We anticipate by the end of next year, by the end of 2025, to have 40 or more national committees, which is fantastic. So that's only about 160 more to go until we've got one in all 195 countries. And that has to be our aspiration. But with the increase even to 40 national committees, it's critically important that all of those national committees sit and work within the framework that we've created, not as a straitjacket to constrain people, but as a flexible framework for which they can all do what they need to do and want to do in their particular national situations, but equally be seen internationally as strong elements of the same organisation. People used to say, when I first got involved in the Blue Shield, that, and I think they just picked the three committees that all began with the letter A. So they said, if you go and listen to a lecture by the Argentinian National Committee, the American National Committee, and the Australian National Committee, you would not understand that they were part of the same international organisation, because the focus of their work was very different, and how they were established was very different. The plan with the framework is that everybody can have the flexibility but be seen to be part of that international community, that international, a word being used a couple of times here, that international family. So the two key parts of that are the 6 areas of activity that we ask everybody to plan and report on an annual basis, and then the 8 threats that have been identified to cultural property, either in armed conflict or in disaster, and how those national committees use the 6 areas of activity to impact and mitigate those threats. So it's absolutely crucial to develop and build on that framework to show that Blue Shield is working on the ground as we have seen it is. Also to see that it's working at an international level, and we have that responsibility to that framework in just the same way as the national committees, to show that we are achieving cultural property protection in all of its manifestations. I'm increasingly beginning to talk about the Blue Shield as the Blue Shield movement, and that comprises the small at the moment, but I hope to expand very soon, central team, Blue Shield International, the national committees, and of course the founding four. And that package, as I say, am increasingly referring to as the movement. But I also have an aspiration that that movement will slowly increase in its scope to include many of the other partners that Blue Shield is increasingly working with. And if you remember when I showed the image of the triangle within the circle, and at the 3 points of the triangle are those three sectors: the heritage sector, the humanitarian sector, and the uniform sector. And to achieve good cultural property protection, we have to have those three sectors working together, both nationally and internationally. And one of the aspirations I would have is for national committees to begin to build those relationships. So nearly all of the national committees have been, completely understandably, generated by the heritage sector. But I think what we need to begin to do is try and include at a national level colleagues from those other points of the triangle, and even perhaps some of those colleagues within the broader circle, the politicians, the lawyers, and the media world. They don't have to become full members of the national committees, but they should be there. So the UK has members and observers. And the observers in the UK National Committee, it's we've had this process for a number of years now, but include the Ministry of Defence, the Ministry of Culture, the UK National Commission for UNESCO, the British Red Cross, and other organisations like that from those other points of the triangle. They don't want to be, in some instances, they wouldn't be allowed to be full members of the committee, but by being there, by having the freedom to talk as an equal partner, but not vote if there were any votes, they bring a richness and a diversity and a strength to the national committees. And that's really where I would like to see all of the national committees going, and hopefully developing that into the, as I say, that Blue Shield movement that becomes an irreversible force for good in terms of cultural property protection. Who's going next?
So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the process. I know we have people in the room thinking about making a committee, and we've definitely got people online. So one of my many roles, I'm the coordinator of all of our national committees, which means I'm the main point of contact. I write the newsletter and the web stories about the amazing things the committees have done. And I'm there to facilitate them. But I also sit on the accreditation committee, which is a subcommittee of the board with Klaus, and it's chaired by Sophie Delapierre of ICOM. And we sort of manage the process agreed by the board and the General Assembly for what it means to become a national committee. And so it's in 2 stages. The first stage is to agree a nominated representative, and that is the person who we're going to say, right, you have the authority to found a committee. And we ask that that is agreed at the national level, because sometimes you might get situations where everybody thinks it's a great idea. Obviously, it is a great idea, but we can't have multiple people trying to do it at once. So we ask that that representative gathers 3 letters of reference to indicate the character of the individual. If we know them, that's brilliant, but obviously we don't know everyone all around the world. So we ask 3 reference letters. Show us your network, show us how connected you are in your country, show us, people saying good things about you. And then 4 letters of support. Because the Blue Shield, when it was founded in 1996, one of the sort of key issues that was coming out in the 90s was that you had ICOM, ICOMOS, IFLA, and the ICA were working in situations of conflict, and they would go to countries and meet each other there. Or they would go, and I think there's one incident in, I can't remember the city, it's in the Balkans, and they went out and they introduced, I think, the archive representative to the library representative who had worked in the same building for 20 years and never spoken to each other. And actually they were facing so many of the same problems. And so the goal was really to try and coordinate the heritage sector to make sure that not only was no heritage overlooked by, ministerial silos and different definitions, but also to streamline that communication process between the different organizations. So now we ask that national committees of ICOM and ICOMOS, if they exist, should also write a letter supporting the committee, not the representative, but the committee, and hopefully agree to support it and work with it. ICA and IFLA don't have national committees, but they will have organizations that can join them, and they have members. And so we work with the international branches there to identify suitable national representatives who then write letters of support. So the idea is then you have your 4 letters of support from the different heritage sectors, your 3 letters of reference to say that you are a real person, and not a visa scam. It could happen. And then a little rough outline. What do you imagine your committee is going to look like? So I think, I would like to have defence on it. I would like to have the Red Cross on it. What is it going to look like in the future? And what is it you want to do? And that is where we ask to make sure you've actually gone and read our statutes and like our goals and our principles. So we don't get somebody saying, I think I'm going to do urban development in peacetime. Nobody would argue that is a real threat to cultural heritage, but it is not what Blue Shield is and does. So we get that little just summary that is a double check for us that you've read it. And then when we have all of that and we think, yep, you know what you're doing, you're a reputable individual, you've got your heritage sector, and you understand what it means to be in the Blue Shield, you get approved. And then the real work begins. Stage 2 is where you then have to write your statutes. And you don't actually have to legally register them, but they will tell us a lot about the type of committee you want to run. Where is it that you're going to get maybe your funding from? So you're looking at membership fees, and that could be written into your statutes, your areas of work, your goals. And actually, when you really think about that, we make you write them out so that you really have to think about who your members are, how are they going to join, how are we going to keep this a fair committee? And we help you with all of that. We don't just, throw you out into the wilds to do it by yourself. We've got draft versions, guidelines, other committees to learn from. Then you have an application form so that we've actually got your contact details, and a declaration that everybody founding the committee signs to say, I have read all these documents, I'm joining this committee, and I know what it is I am joining. And that's everything from some guidelines about the use of the emblem, because the Blue Shield is legally protected under international law, and you can't alter it or change it. So you have to sign to say you've understood all of that, about what it is to be in the Blue Shield. And everybody signs it, and then we give you a lovely letter that says, welcome to the Blue Shield. It's not a quick process. It takes a while, but you get a much stronger committee by doing that. Because one of the things we found in the earlier stages, before we had this quite robust process, is that actually maybe committees would start, but they were very much invested in one individual. And then when that person was no longer able to do that, they would, the committee would collapse. So we have this process now that tries to bring together invested people, which is really, really important. And it's also ideally responsive to national circumstances. That's why you don't have to register if you're in a country where that is not maybe supportive to civil society organisations, or you can make it what it needs to be for your country, and we'll work with you on that. So I'll do questions of that at the end, but that's it in a nutshell. So I think now to pass to committee number 34, who have had their Welcome to the Blue Shield letter for about a week and a half, and congratulations to them.
Thank you so much, Emma, and thank you, Peter, also. I represent Blue Shield Sweden, and being Blue Shield Sweden chair is, for me, probably temporary, but I inherited the position, the honorable position to be, as when I became ICOM chair, Sweden ICOM chair, spring 23, the Blue Shield team, or what we should call it in Sweden, were all, already working for coming into this process. And we started by doing this first step. So I am a real person and so on. But it was also a lot of information activities because we need this, everybody wanted to support us, but when you start the real process, you also have to explain to the different institutions that needs to support you that why do we need a reference letter from you, because then, wow, should we do this? And the Ministry of Culture, what does it mean that we sign a letter for you? And so on. So it is a challenge and a work to explain why we do this and what is needed. And it has taken almost 1.5 years. We thought it would go a little bit faster. But to summarize, I should say that it was good for us to have this process, because then you really have to consider all the questions from Blue Shield International. Also makes you really think through what is possible for us, what is needed, and the statutes are important. And for us, the big challenge vis-à-vis Blue Shield International Secretariat was to also explain the traditions of Swedish civil organizations, because we have a very strong history of civil organizations in Sweden. It's during the 20th century that was a large part of building our society in different areas. So everybody knows what an NGO is in Sweden, but also for us it would not be possible not to be registered, because then we are not a proper organization. So for us it has been important to get this approval, and also during this 1.5 years, we have tried to do a little bit of information. We invited for an online seminar where you participated to also try to involve these other partners, the armed forces and so on. And we have still a long way to go there, but we tried to inform them what is Blue Shield International. And it's not the Blue Shield marking, because that is an authority decision, and a lot of people know about that, but not a lot of people knows about Blue Shield International. That is also something we have discovered during this year. So it is important to work with this, what it called in English, I'm not sure of the word, but to make the platform for the organization during the process. And what is also a challenge is, of course, that the founding four are different bodies. ICOM and ICOMOS are member organizations, quite well known in Sweden, but IFLA and ICA have a different character and are represented by national authorities. So this has also been, well, how will it be in the future? We will see. Also, that has given us, credibility, that they are behind this. So that is also very good. And we've also tried to use the window of opportunity that it is in Sweden right now, where we are building the capacity for cultural heritage protection. So I think now, when we are in this position of register organization formally, we also will have the possibility to really do something. And also, I think we need to show what you do in other national committees, what is possible to do, because this is a new materia for Swedish authorities. And in the cultural heritage sector, I would say also in Sweden, we don't have that much of international collaboration. European Union is has not yet been a big part for the cultural heritage culture. So I think we have a lot of opportunities. But this process, I wish to, you said we have been waiting for this approval and these discussions about the statues. But I would just like to say really much thank you and appreciating your tremendous support. And it is amazing, really, what you do with such a small secretariat. And we've also had the opportunity to have a little film from you explaining what Blue Shield is. And now we will continue this work. We presented it at a conference together with the National Heritage Board. And we will see now what everybody does. But it is very... it takes a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. And we are very happy now to be a national committee. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Let's just keep going.
Okay. James Reep from the U.S. Committee. And Emma asked me to talk a little bit about our legal structure. And I mentioned a little bit in my presentation beforehand. But before I say that, I do appreciate the comments that Peter made, that while the organization internationally and through its committees have to adhere to some basic principles, there has to really be the flexibility to adjust to not only the legal regime in your country, but also the common practices. And you know, as some of the international organizations that we may be members of, as they grow, they become very more centralized and a bit more dictatorial. So I really appreciate the flexibility in realizing that we're all unique. And when Blue Shield USA was founded, we have in a category of a nonprofit, a corporation in the U.S., we have two basic structures, and you have to choose. One is that your members are in control of the organization. They approve the statutes and the bylaws. They elect the officers. They approve the annual report and the finances. And the other model is while you may have supporting members, the control of the organization is entirely in the hands of the board of directors and the officers, and that was chosen as the model of U.S. Blue Shield. And initially, it makes it a good bit easier for a new and small organization to get going and operating. But we found that it works well. But the challenge is then, how do we interest other people in our organization? And in the United States, there's a long tradition of nonprofit organizations and citizen support and joining to provide financial and moral support to those organizations. So the way we have begun to do that is we have categories of supporting membership from professionals and students to interested individuals, and several levels of institutional membership. And those membership categories for both interested individuals and institutions are graduated in the ability of those and the interest of those organizations in supporting. So, for example, we have 3 levels of supporting membership, and those come with, in effect, the lowest level 4 individual memberships for their officers or the other interested parties in that institution or organization, and then another level with 6 and another level with 8 individual members. And so those are one way that we have found that it helps our structure. Also, the number of interested members is relevant when we are applying for government funds or from grantor agencies. But even more than that, it's with our structure particularly, it's the support of the board. And so we have a policy among the board that every board member has to contribute financially to the organization. Because we found that among donor organizations in the United States, that's one of the first questions they ask: are all of your board members financially contributing? We haven't set a limit or an amount, but it's important for our fundraising activities that we can show unanimity in at least not only contributing your time, but contributing financially to the organization. So it's not a common structure, as I understand it, for other organizations, other national committees, but it's one that seems to have worked well for us. And so I thought I would just kind of provide that kind of a perspective. And fortunately, we're a part of an organization that allows for that kind of flexibility, that we have adjusted best to the legal and financial realities of doing business in the United States.
Thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts about Blue Shield Germany. Blue Shield Germany was founded in 2017, but only in 2020 real work started. The founding board had some recovery time, obviously. We are an association under German law, not for profit and of public benefit. And as such, we have to obey to certain strong rules to get registered with our justice, with our tax authorities. These rules, I think, are within Europe very much alike, all the same, nearly all the same. We were founded in a situation where the cultural heritage protection scenery in Germany was, I wouldn't say sated, but well endowed. So we had to find our place within all these different actors to look what is really needed, where are the gaps we can fill. And we identified, of course, that there's a lot of there are a lot of alliances for disaster response, things like such, but concerning protecting cultural property in armed conflict and implementing the Hague Conventions, there is not so much. We have an association which is very close to us, the German Society for Cultural Property Protection, that's so it's called. This is a particularity of German-speaking countries. I think they have one in Austria and they have one in Switzerland and in Germany. And these are so close to us that we cooperate very closely. We added this association and the German National Committee of UNESCO to our constitutional members. So we have not only the founding 4, we have founding 6 members, which is important for us to have on the board these 6 organizations. We have altogether 11 board members, 6 constitutional members, and 4 elected members plus president. We have different membership categories, of course, supporting members, none by now. We have honorary members, we have legal person members, so associations or institutions, and we have individual members. These legal persons as associations and institutions are important for us, for networking, of course. We have museum associations, for example, regional and national. We have monument protection institutions or association which conveys these monument protection ministries in 16 countries in Germany, Bundesländer. These are important, but I really want to emphasize the most important are our individual members, because all work is done voluntarily and all work is done by individuals. Of course, also representatives of associations or institutions are individuals and they can do work, but normally I would say these are the individual members. They conduct working groups. They do research for the Blue Shield Germany. We have now about 60 plus members. And we very much rely on the individual members, and I would really emphasize this and suggest all committees. I hear now there are, and I know from the accreditation committees there are other models, but for Germany I can say this is most important to have these individuals. They may be restorers or art historians or archaeologists or lawyers. We have an active officer. We have 3 reserve officers from the Bundeswehr in our committee. These are very important, and we can integrate them before having formal connections to the Bundeswehr. We have those people who know the insight, who have the insight to the Bundeswehr. What we did then, once we had identified the gaps and where we should start to work, we created working groups. We have 3 working groups. One is, or 4. One is the working group on civil protection. One is the working group on military cultural property protection. One is for public relations, and the youngest one is for launching monitor of damage of cultural property, which we designed after the shining example of Blue Shield France, of course, and we hope that will be launched in the end of October. What we do with the military property protection working group is to get the access to the Bundeswehr, and some of our board members have already been participating in CIMIC exercises twice. So it is we get slowly this access to the armed forces, but can be more. But this is was a good start. With the civil cultural property protection working group, we tried to identify what is missing to implement the Hague Convention in Germany, and that leads me to another crucial point for our work. All cultural affairs are, due to our federal constitution, are affairs of the Bundesländer, the countries. So once we want to know more about how is the Hague Convention implemented, we do not have only to contact the Ministry of Defense. We have also contact the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we have to contact 16 ministries of culture in 16 Bundesländer. The starting point was the list of protected items, sites, or objects according to the Hague Convention. we even, there are lists, but they are in a very poor condition. We even were not allowed to see these lists. So among us, there's no public here, where I can say you, we got the lists, and these are really very poor. There are some lists who have 20 or 30 sites from one land, and the other lists have about 1,100. There are lists which do not even have the addresses of the sites. The names, they say just State Library of Bavaria in Munich. That's all. So this is really something we would like to bring forward, but it is due to this federal constitution, it is difficult, and but we are we're trying hard. So what is next and important? Okay, yes, board meeting. We have a board meeting monthly. Only 2 board meetings a year are mandatory, formally with minutes and agenda and so on. The other board meetings are open also to our members. Members are invited to join the board meetings, and we established recently another format to get in touch with our members. It's called Meet a Member. So in Germany, Meet a Member. This should introduce new members to the other members and to the board, because communication with the membership is very important. We realized that members who got addressed, once you reach out to a member and ask him or her, do you want to work with us, or do you want to be participate in this working group? They always say, oh yes, I will. But if you don't reach out, you will never get a response. So the communication within our membership, individual members of course, is very important to activate all this expertise and this capacity we have in our committee. And as I said, 60 or 70, 60 plus members, there's a lot of different capacity. Yes, just to end with 3 strategic considerations. The first is we want to, as I said, to fill gap, to deliver services, for example, workshop for emergency response together with the fire workers with this container that has devices to clean damaged papers, for example, in archives. We want to widen our reach. So therefore, for example, prior to the last federal elections, we addressed all political parties delivering touchstones, and they should respond to us how they see the situation in cultural property protection. And all parties did it in a way which is not very specific, but we thought that we should reach out to the political parties because they should know the name Blue Shield and Blue Shield Germany, of course. And in a more long-term consideration, as our president Matthias Veri told you the day before yesterday, we are trying to establish Blue Shield Germany as a hub of competence by, for example, publishing a handbook on cultural property protection. So these are small steps first to be done and steps that take more time. And that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's brilliant from the people here in person. Let's see if we can move this online. Do we have Christina from Blue Shield Belgium? She was definitely there at the start.
Hello?
Hello, perfect.
Hello, yeah?
And you had a
Hello?
slide. Hello, can you hear me? We can hear you. And you had a
Yes,
slide you want to share? If you share your screen,
yes, if possible.
share your screen.
I will try to do so. Yeah, here. Is it okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So good afternoon, and thank you for having me in this panel. I'm very glad to come again, representing our Blue Shield Belgium and his structure and activities. I don't know if you have followed the presentation of a few minutes earlier this week, but I will take over again this slide because it's explaining a bit more in a structural way our the organization of our non-profit association. So because we exist already some years, next year 25 years, what can we say after this period that everything is depending of the voluntary involvement of our members and especially of the board. This is a very important organ, and so there we need really to have a good working group of people who are in charge and want to deliver their work on a voluntary basis. And they need to also to have some time to spend on it. So there are 7 board members. As in most organizations, it's a bit the same with a general assembly, with where members have the possibility to vote on the every important issues. But the board members are seeing each other each 4 times a year, and so especially when the events are more important, when there is really a crisis, as for the flood in 2021, we were on a regular basis of phone calls, WhatsApp group, and mail. Then it's practically each day that there is a contact. So as I explained also, with the possibility of our grants of the Walloon region and the federal, the Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles, who is the French-speaking community, rather difficult in Belgium, it's a very complex situation. We have now the possibility so to engage one staff member, and that makes a lot of differences for us because for the first time it was a really challenge also, because we are now considered as a small enterprise, even if we have just one staff member, but you have to follow all the official law about that, about having someone in your service, and that's very much administration. We need to have a prevention council to see if everything is all right on the place where she's working, when she is going out on a mission, if she's covered by the insurance, etc. But it's more than we have thought, and so when the rest is done on a voluntary basis, it's a lot of work that's bringing just the administration for only staff member for a part-time, but she do great work for us, and normally she has to be here, but she's now on a mission in Sicily for her other job. She's also part of University of Ghent archaeological team. But she is, as I said, the light blue person here, and she saw the link between the Secretariat, the board. She's also following as an observer, because she's not a real member of the board. She's following as an observer our meetings, and then she will be in charge of the crisis response team. This idea crisis response team is coming from France, and we are very grateful to our French colleagues that we can follow also a training that they are organizing each year, and where we will participate this year with Vanessa and another member of Blue Shield. This crisis response team will be a small team of maybe 10 or 20 persons who can take charge over the volunteers. When there is happening during a crisis, they need to evacuate, for example, works of art from a church to a depot. Then we need to have people on the ground to explain, to make the scenario from what they need to do, and the way they have to they have to manipulate works of art, for example. So, of course, we have a group of volunteers. They are not members. They are not paying membership of 25 euros as the others, but they are getting our newsletter. And we see that there is increasing interest in this way of to be involved also in the protection of cultural heritage. We received last week 2 other applications for that. So it's something that is living, especially at universities and in some centers. And so people want to do something. And that's a very good sign that we saw after the flood, who was really a moment of total crisis for all Belgium. And we saw that the sensibilization is increasing a lot afterwards. And so these expert volunteers, it's a bit a large group to organize something for them. They are not so free to participate in trainings and so on. So we will start first with the crisis response team to have some people on the ground who are really responsible. What we have see also that in Belgium, as the other panel members already told also, we have a really structured way, of course, of crisis management. And in our country, the governors are especially in charge and are responsible for the part of everything it's of crisis in municipality or in province area. And so we are very glad that for the first time we had already signed 3 conventions with 3 governors who find it very important that Blue Shield is really integrated in their crisis management. And for 2 of them, we will be in discipline 4, that's the civil protection and logistics. And so for the moment, one of our goals is um, uh, to have more contact with civil protection. We already had one reunion not so long ago, one meeting, and I had to say the civil protection was very open, very positive about the idea to integrate also cultural property into their strategic plans. And they offered us the possibility to have a depot for equipment and material for protection of cultural heritage. So that are things that are very positive and that we are now developing, but we are still in the first stage for that element. I have to say, very important is, of course, the partnership, especially with the Royal Institute of Cultural Heritage, because they are also exploring the possibility to have more attention for cultural property and the protection of it, especially on the national level. So we have the municipality, the province and national level, and IRPA is more, KIKIRPA is more working on that level with the National Crisis Committee. So I hope this is I give you a small idea of our activities the last years, and I wish you the best for the following up of this conference. Thank you.
I'm back. That was wonderful, Christina. Thank you so much. And so Belgium is one of the oldest committees in the Blue Shield. In 2000 is when the first committees were formed. And last but certainly not least, we have another of the oldest committees, which is France, which I think also dates to 2000. And so I'd like to thank Francois also for her time. I don't know if you have slides, feel free to share your screen. And if not, can we move your face onto the main screen, I hope?
Yes, I'm going to...
Perfect.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. I will share with my screen so that you don't have to see only my beautiful face in that big screen. That looks pretty frightening to me. Is it? Yeah. So it is the French Blue Shield website that was redesigned recently. So I'm on the board of administrator, and I am more specifically in charge of contact and foreign affairs, if you can call them like that. I really wanted to thank you first about that topic of the structure of committees, because I think it's a very crucial thing in what we're trying to build through the Blue Shield network. The French committee is effectively, I think it started in 2001, and it was really designed as a committee, very small number of people, mostly in the ministries in Paris, representative of the military and people from museum, historical monuments, etc. Now that very small committee had to change quite fast, actually. And the structure evolved slowly until 2010, when a first big change of statute happened. We have been, of course, an NGO from the start. But I'd say the story of the French committee is interesting in that we moved from a small lobbying committee towards a bigger, a wider association with a different profile of membership. And there was some debate about that all along that story. So that's why I think it's important for the new committees to think about it in the fact that it's going to change potentially, and that you will have to renew sometimes also your type of membership. So for the structure we have at the minute is a reduced board that is really an executive board managed by the president and the general secretary, and people having specific tasks, like logistic, for example, is the person who is in charge of providing and managing the sale of the small blue shields that we provide to organizations who want to use them in their emergency plans. We also have coordination for the local sections, because we do have local section. I'm going to develop on that. we have someone for social network, etc. And then we have a bigger board of directors. And it's been also subject to many debates how we should compose it. But basically, we are half elected members and half official representative. So, of course, representative from the founding organization. And as my colleagues noted in the other committees, it's easier to have someone from ICOM to participate to our board because they have national committees. It is much more difficult for ICA or organizations who don't have national committees. We have also kept the possibility to have representative from the ministries, Ministry of Defense, the ministry in charge of civil protection, of national education even. And we don't have always those people being designated and contributing effectively to the board, but at least they are kind of somewhere in the statutes and they could have contributed. We also now have signed a new convention with the Red Cross, a French committee that is represented in the board. So we have, I would just say a short word about the sections. We have local sections, and we are now about to map out the whole metropolitan France. We don't have a section yet in the Caribbean and in other insular countries, departments. But we are almost covering the whole country now, and each of our sections has 1 or 2 delegates, which has been something going on for some time. We initially tried to create local section quite early, before 2010. And we always had that thought that emergency specialists that could go on site was something we would like to do. And we had several try and fail on that chapter. And I think it's really interesting to really remember that you are going to want to aim at some objective and you do not succeed. And from not succeeding, there is a moment of letting the problem rest and you come back to it. So effectively, we have now since last year a formed structure to go on site as experts, firstly for evaluation and then for rescue. And it was slow to build, but we have the French civil protection agreement on it. So we can have access and we can be requested to go on site, which is really a key. It's no use trying to structure your organization so that you can go on site if at the end the rescue services won't let you in because they don't have any proof that you're properly trained or that your organization is the knowledge for such type of intervention. So that was we also do like other committees, advocacy and all kind of varied missions. I would say that we did try the structure of working groups, and then we gave it up and came back to having more specific person in charge of specific missions. Depending on the periods, we did have periods with board of directors, with directors who are very active, and it's what's happening at the minute. So they do accept to take a mission and follow up on it and progress in their target. We also had period where we had working groups or board of directors and actually nothing was progressing. And I think it's really, we are a voluntary-based organization, and to keep people motivated, also to train the members so they can be efficient, because we have a wide range of membership. They are all professional of the heritage sector, but not all of them, of course, are having much training in emergency management. So you need time to train the people so they can then see how they can fit in progressing some missions, and then they do want to be elected as a director. And that process is a long-term and slow burn process that you really need to keep in mind. Otherwise, you end up having a very dynamic board of members and direction, and then next election it's collapsing a bit, and then you have another 4 years where you have another team starting all over again. And we all want, I think, as committees, we all want the continuity. We want that there is slow but regular progress, and that's really the difficult thing to achieve if you don't plan ahead what is going to be your membership base. I would say to finish on that is that we always had for a long time we were very keen on having more people from the rescue services. So not heritage professionals, but fire guards, people from the Red Cross, etc., that would join us as members. And it is now really, really happening in the last 3-4 years. We have a double type of membership that is quite useful for that. We have individual membership that is voluntarily not expensive, because we don't want to discourage anybody to join for financial reasons. And then we have institutional membership, and for that, public authorities or other organizations can join in, and depending on the size of the organization, they will pay a different rate. That's very useful for 2 reasons. First, because we do have big regions in the country who decide to be members, and so they bring in more money. But also, it's making some type of members that wouldn't have joined individually to encourage their institution to join in, and that's working very well, for example, now for the fire guards. So we have the whole fire guards from one section of the country that is going to decide to be part of the Blue Shield, whereas at an individual level, all fire guards wouldn't, especially or they would join in for a couple of years and then they would disappear. So I think it's worth really considering thoroughly what type of organization you want to have, the size of it, and to come back to what I was saying about the fact we started from a small number of heritage sector professionals, mostly with higher jobs in the national administration. We have now a membership that is larger, probably less curators, and much more people in charge of preventive conservation, registrar. So the people who have to manage the emergency plans in their institution. And so they do have the basic knowledge of emergency planning anyway, because they have to do it in their job. And they are also very much hands-on. So I would say the success we finally met in structuring an emergency response unit was partly also because we have diversified the profiles of our membership. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've time for questions, so I will, if you could stay on the screen, because I know the first question is for you. So to one of our oldest committees from one of our newest committees.
Thank you so much. This is Helen from Sweden. It's very interesting to hear both from the oldest committees and also from you who have worked a couple of years. And I think all of us want to see the possibility to have these kind of emergency teams, rescue teams that can really work both locally, regionally, and perhaps also go on missions. But one question, we have had a lot of discussions about if we should have only institutional but also individual members. And of course we want to have both, but there is also a challenge to have individual members. It takes administration, but also one question I would like to ask the oldest committees with rescue teams or emergency teams: how do you, because it's based on voluntary work, and how do you secure that you have access to them from their ordinary jobs, and how do you secure their insurances that they are safe? Because going on missions, and especially like we saw from Turkey, this is also, it could also be very dangerous. So how have you managed this to secure your access to them? And do you have agreements with their employers, or do they do this on their? Do they need to take vacation? And how do you secure their security?
Yeah, it's really really the core of the issue that you have to deal with when you want to create those intervention units. We tried it both ways. Initially, we tried the voluntary based. We struggled a long time with the question of you insure people. We struggled a long time with how people are going to be available. In France, one of the main point of answer was to be accredited by the civil protection, because as soon as the Ministry of Interior gives you that agreement, it means that you have a different level of discussion with the employer of the volunteer. For example, fire guards are mostly volunteers in France. So you're a fire guard and your employers know that you can be called to go on site as an emergency, as a fire guard. So the same system exists now for us. It doesn't mean that the employer has to say yes. And that's why in the volunteering fire guard system, they have so many volunteers fire guards, because you need a big pool to be sure you have a couple of the people available on the spot. And of course, in the heritage sector, it's more difficult if you have only heritage professionals, because there are much less heritage professionals than potential volunteers for fire guards. So that's a difficult balance. We did try to go through offering a type of convention that each volunteer would have his employer to sign, agreeing that he can be on call, etc. We try to have conventions between local authorities to support each other, so that's working to a degree, but to send people to each other when there is an issue, then you end up with a million of convention going from one entity to another, and it's just very complex administration to put in. So for us at the moment, it's really the agreement for the civil protection that's kind of changed a lot the situation. And also they give you the agreement if they are sure your organization is solid enough. For a long time, we struggled on the fact that we were not enough members that could act to the standards. And that's why also our local sections were very important, because we can now, when we got the agreement, it was under condition that we would improve our mapping of the country, and that we would also change some elements in our statutes. So very, very practically, the question of insurance is important. The question of who you send on site is important. We have now an obligation to provide a training. We also have an obligation to have in our statute a whole range of measures to exclude people. Because if you go on site, the basic behavior in a rescue operation is that if someone doesn't behave properly or doesn't follow orders, the head of the operation can tell the person, you get out of here. And they don't want to have civilian NGOs coming in on specific topics and just not fitting in that decision system. So we had to amend our statutes to say members who are misbehaving or whatever, they can be sent back home, they can be, and then we have to have a disciplinary system behind if there is effectively a bigger issue with the volunteer. So all that was a bit easier to put into place as soon as we were in discussion with the Ministry of Interior, because they have their way and their system and their experience to manage that. But I'd say for other experience, that really you really want to be sure that you send people on site. They have the expertise, they have the capacity to protect themselves and stay safe, and they have to be used to a rescue chain of command. Otherwise, it's going to be much too complicated.
Thank you. That's really interesting and really useful. Christina, obviously Belgium had 200 volunteers on your slide. Perhaps you could also comment a little bit on that.
Yes, gladly. I have to say the volunteers, whole movement started after the flood, immediately after the flood. So there were many volunteers, especially of the field, part of them also independent restorers of work of arts. And they went to the sites who were affected. Then we have searched for an insurance to cover the operations. But the only insurance we can offer them is the civil responsibility, as it calls. That we have organized with together with a firm of insurances who are really very important on the art forum, and so they helped us therefore. But for the group that we will train this autumn and later on the next year for the crisis response team. So there are still many questions. We are just at the beginning, where France is already further in the development of that. And I see there are many issues. We'd like to have to work also with a convention with them, but for the moment it are individuals and not institutional representatives who will participate. We have already some applicants now. They need to have the possibility and agreement of their administration, of course, when they are working as, for example, in archives. But we like to have a convention that at least 2 years we can work with them, that they will be standby. But all the other issues, I think, the partnership with the civil protection and the Red Cross is very important, because they are working with volunteers too. And so that are good examples probably to base on and to have more a regular base to send people on site. So that's not evident, but we are more at the beginning for the organization of this crisis response team. So.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So, I mean, I definitely have some more questions for people, but I'd like to take the time to open it up to the room first, and then if there are questions from online. So, please use the microphone.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello. I'm Andrea. I'm from Romania, and I congratulate all of you and thank you very much for your stories and also for all the advices. If Sweden is newborn, somehow Romania is in, I don't know, the first trimester of pregnancy or something. We just made the first step. And hearing Klaus that they have this, do you want to be a member? In the last 2 weeks, I made to my colleagues, will you marry me? And right now I have seven happy marriages in our newborn committee. In Romania, we do have this kind of commission, the National Commission of Humanitarian Law, International Humanitarian Law. In fact, Peter met of some of my colleagues. It is made by 8 members nominated by the 8 ministers. Justice, Internal Affairs, External Affairs, Defense, Environment, Health, Education, and Culture. I'm one of the nominated from the Minister of Culture, along with my colleague Julian, you met 2 days before. Do you have such, and this commission is somehow in charge of implementing Convention of Hague in Romania, and I was just wondering the way that we should cooperate with this commission, which already had some protocols with Red Cross, different kind of opening to the other partners involved in this. Do you have any of this committee, something like this, similar organization? And how is the cooperation with them? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Remind me afterwards to put you in touch. So in Argentina, the committee president is the head of the Committee for International Law in the government. So I'll put you in touch with her and also talk to Poland. Any comments from the floor here? Or from, well, go to the Francois and Christine? No?
I can just comment from Sweden, and when I presented our committee on Tuesday, I also mentioned that our government has just, we don't have a commission of humanitarian law, but that sounds very good. But we have a new advisory board for cultural heritage protection, and they have only had 2 meetings yet, but we hope that they will be kind of coordinating these kind of issues that also can help raise these different things that needs to be coordinated, or legislation and so on. But unfortunately, the armed forces are not in it. So it's only limited to the cultural heritage sector and the National Contingency Agency for Preparedness. So we will see, but it sounds like a very good thing to have a broader view on humanitarian law than just in different parts.
Thanks. It's more than a question. It's 2 very quick consideration about a couple of things that Peter, you, Emma, and all the other talk about. First of all, the international framework is a national framework. I have to tell you that at the beginning of the 21st century, in Italy, there were several, let's say so, attempts to create a Blue Shield committee, National Blue Shield Committee. They were totally unsuccessful. Why? For many reasons. But the first reason was that it was not clear the international framework. And I really think that the new statute in 1996 has been really fundamental. I think that it was a great step forward for Blue Shield. Because before that, there were people, friends, colleagues, in good faith, very good colleagues, that self-appointed themselves representative of the Blue Shield International. We have several people saying that they were the Blue Shield. Even some small associations do the same. So you can imagine the disaster. But after the 1996 framework, now it's very clear. The process to create a Blue Shield association, national association, is clear. And I really think that what you, Emma, the process you described, it's the correct one. At least it worked very well with us, contact people. We had a very good contact people, not me, but good friends of mine. I was asked afterwards to join the efforts. And then an agreement between the 4 associations, the founding 4 associations. Really, for me, it's necessary. Otherwise, you really start with the wrong legs, or without a legs, just with one leg, so it's very difficult to win a marathon. It's difficult. It took us, like in Sweden, more than 1 year to get an agreement. Not because there was someone that was against the Blue Shield National Committee, but because the 4 associations have their own culture, their own way of thinking, their point of view, their habits. So it takes a lot of time, but then we agree about the statutes. That is the most important thing. Now, as I said yesterday, in October, we really start with the first National Assembly of the Blue Shield. And the second is the issue about individual and institution. That's, we are, like all of you, we have individual members and institutional members, of course. But I totally agree with the triangle that Peter talked about. So we are for heritage association, of course, but we have to enlarge, we have to work in partnership with other associations outside the heritage field, because in the heritage field, let's say so, that our 4 associations are the expert. There are not many more other experts outside than our 4 associations. But of course, we have to act in relationship in Italy. It's evident with the civil protection, the national and regional system of the civil protection, which is the real structure that acts in our case, in case of natural disaster. So what we are going to do, if you ask the ministry or the Carabinieri or the army or the Red Cross to designate, to appoint a formal representative, it will take years, at least in Italy. It's impossible. It's a waste of time. So what we are going to do, we act through the individuals. So we have created this, both in the executive board and in the technical scientific committee, we are working hard to have friends, colleagues, experts in the field that can take the point of view, the culture, the strategies of their own institution inside Blue Shield. So we have already contacted, and I'm finishing, contacting a former Director General of the ministry in charge of the civil protection, and he will come inside our executive board. A leader of the Carabinieri who is not going to act on behalf of the Carabinieri, that's impossible, but who will be able to take their experience inside our committee. And so for the Red Cross, it's a little bit easier, but however, it's complicated. So I think that, and of course, the ministry will not join as institutions to the Blue Shield, that, of course, neither the Carabinieri nor the Red Cross. So it's impossible, at least in the Italian scenario. But it's very important to have their point of view and work with them. And finding out the right person that can do that, I think it's the way to solve some problems. Lastly, and I'm finishing, of course, in the field in Italy is the civil protection and the ministry and the army and the Carabinieri who acts. And you have to act inside our system. But we are going to have the membership, our membership in the next days and after, in this year, let's say so. If you want to act with them, you have to be accredited by the national civil protection system. As our friend from France said clearly. So I think for Italy, we cannot create another emergency system. There is an efficient emergency system, but we can take to the emergency system the competencies of our association, meaning the heritage competencies, but also our capacity to coordinate, to put together different kind of discipline, competencies, and experience.
Thank you very much, and that is a lovely note to end us on for coffee. I would like to give a big thank you to all of our speakers, both in the room and on the internet.